I just want to go ahead and go over, what a firewall is, just in case you guys don't know, or if you guys do know. This may be just a review for you guys. Again, let's go ahead and just save the questions to the end of the presentation. After the presentation, we're going to go ahead and look at the differences between just a router versus a next generation firewall, but we'll jump into that. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so guys, welcome again to the FortiGate journey. And this is meant, I'm going to go ahead and follow the NSE4 study guide, right, to help you guys if you guys are studying for the NSE4 or NSE5 or what have you. This will help you rev up and be ready to administer the FortiGate firewall. Okay, so real quick, of course, just like Carlos and James said, I love the OSI model. When I was working at Cisco TAC, I really like to keep things simple, right? And typically, right, a firewall, they work at layer 3 to layer 4. They can work at layer 2 and layer 1 if you have it running in transparent mode, but we're not going to get too deep into that. Just remember, right, it works at layer 3 and layer 4. Next generation firewalls typically covers layer 3 all the way up to layer 7. So fun stuff, but we'll get deeper into that later. Just I want you to remember the OSI model, layer 1s all the way to layer 7, which I'm sure you guys already know. So what is a firewall, right? So these three things define what a firewall is, right? A network security device that protects your network from unwanted traffic, right? Firewalls, they also block incoming malware based on a set of pre-programmed rules, just like Daniel said previously in our last meeting, ACLs, right? So we program those, which will block incoming and outgoing traffic. But we'll talk about the differences about ACLs and ACLs within a router and with the firewall later on. And of course, these rules can also prevent users within a network from accessing certain sites and programs. And of course, this PowerPoint will be shared with you guys. The source is on Fortinet's website. What better source to share, right? So, firewalls, right? Old school firewall, right? Versus the next gen firewall. Who wins, right? As you guys can see, Raiden beat the brakes off of Sub-Zero, right? Or in this case, the next generation firewall beats the old school firewall, right? And I'm sure you guys know why, right? The threat landscape, right, within all environments is widening, right? It's not just we can put, end users and a switch and just an old school firewall, right? And that'll protect the network, right? Folks go home, folks can work from home, and they'll go ahead and they may infect their device at home, and they may come back into the network and infect the network, right? So how are we going to protect the network, right? It's that next gen firewall that's capable of taking care of that broadening and that wider threat landscape, okay? So why a next generation firewall, right? Just like the reasons I just explained, right? It can do a lot of things. It can do what a United Threat Management firewall can do. It can do web application firewalling. It can do networking. It can do IPsec tunnels. It can do a lot of things, right? And again, we'll go over what it can do in our sessions, our tech sessions, and some of the theory discussions, right? So what does a firewall do, right? Proxy versus stateful, right? So typically a proxy, right? A proxy goes ahead and it modifies that traffic coming from an end user host to get out to the network, right? So it'll go ahead and manipulate that traffic and say, hey, you're creating a session with the firewall, and I'm going to create a session at the same time with the network, with the World Wide Web, right? And it's going to be two different sessions, right? What about a stateful firewall, right? It's going to go ahead and it's going to track the sessions, right? And it's basically going to do some NAT, right? So it's going to go ahead and let you, right, from your end user host going out to the world. It's still going to keep your session, but it's just going to go ahead and modify the source IP address going to the destination. So it's not so much proxying that traffic, right? And we'll touch more. If you don't know what proxying and stateful means, it's okay. We're going to go ahead and touch on that in later sessions, right? I'm sure you guys know, a lot of you guys are in the security and the IT field, the difference between host-based firewalls versus network firewalls. And I'm going to touch on them real quick, right? Host-based, think of your Microsoft Defender, right? Microsoft Windows Defender. Think about those, right? Or Symantec, right? Those that are installed and of course that don't allow, for you to do certain things based on what your admins configure, right? Your network firewalls, right? Those are based on the entire network or the entire broadcast domain of wherever you're sitting that network device at, right? So it's not just a host base, it's just only to one host. Network is to the entire network, okay? Just remember it like that. And of course, like I told you guys in the beginning, the OSI model, the firewalls typically sit at layer 3 and layer 4, okay? So, and again, here's a quick little infographic just to make it simple. And you guys will get this content, okay? And if you guys don't get it, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, Slack group. I'll go ahead and share it with you guys, okay? And the sources of the infographics and everything has been posted on this PowerPoint, okay? So why are firewalls important, right? So, of course, the firewalls, they're right now in this day and age, it's needed to be installed in your infrastructure, right? Somebody like Brian, right? That's security focused. You come doing an audit. If you don't have anything that's auditing that traffic, that's mitigating traffic, that's allowing or blocking traffic, you're susceptible to bad actors coming in and manipulating your network or infecting your network, possibly providing a data breach or pushing in some exploits or some or plenty of different things that attack the world today, right? So their main job, right, is to go ahead and monitor incoming and outgoing traffic and either allow it or block it. And of course, as you see below, they protect the network from those 3 things. And of course, a little bit more, but we'll touch on that in later sessions, okay? So what are the type of firewalls? I know I touched on a few before, but let's go over them again. So web application firewalls, WAFs, unified threat management firewalls, UTM firewalls, so your antivirus, your IPS, all of those, of course, those are UTMs. Network address translation firewalls, so think of those like your routers, your Cisco routers where you just had ACLs and they were just manipulating traffic coming from inside the network going out, right? Your internal segmentation firewalls, and these are firewalls that just work at layer 2, right? And that's just blocking traffic coming from one port, going out another port, okay? Typically used for, network refreshes or network cutovers going from maybe one device to another, right? And last but not least, of course, what we're going to cover in NSE4 in this journey is next generation firewalls, right? So why, right? As you guys can see, one of my favorite superheroes, the Black Superman, right? That's how I like to think about these next generation firewalls, right? And so a next generation firewall is similar to a UTM firewall, right? Combining with a WAF or what have you, and with FortiGate, they actually have the option to add in those other different types of firewalls within it, right? And they combine the functionalities and the capabilities of previous generation firewalls, right? It does stateful inspection, for example, with techniques and technologies that address the ongoing, evolving, and threat landscape, okay? And of course, as you guys know, it's very serious right now to have a next generation firewall in your environment. So Palo Alto, FortiGate, or Cisco Firepower, Cisco ASA, working in conjunction, right? I'm sure you guys work with some of those. All right, and that's it. Guys, any questions so far?
I have one. What's the difference between a next-gen firewall and an IPS?
Say it again.
What's the difference between a next-gen firewall and an IPS?
Good question. Good question. So remember, IPS falls under the category of a unified threat management firewall, right? So it's only doing that one function, right? The IPS is just intrusion prevention, right? It's just doing only that one function. A next generation firewall is doing unified threat management and web application firewalling and matting and a whole bunch of things that involve networking, right? With security as well, right? So if you just implement an IPS, you're just taking care of one part of monitoring that traffic. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. All right, folks. Well, simple topology, right? I woke up this morning. Typically, I don't go ahead and I don't find topologies, right? I'm at the point in my career where, and of course, within these sessions, we go ahead and make a topology as we go, just like Carlos stated. So simple topology, I want to show you guys the differences between an old school firewall, right? Or what they call just ACLs that you implement on a router, and a FortiGate firewall. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's cut these other devices on, and let's go ahead and see the difference. By the way, guys, this is EVE-NG, so a virtualized box for now. And later in our later sessions, we're going to go ahead and I'm sure you guys saw the pictures. We're going to use physical FortiGates, and you guys are going to be jumping into the devices and playing around with them as well. So we'll touch on that, of course, in later sessions. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Let's give time for these devices to boot up. Guys, just so you know, just for comparison, I have both the router and the FortiGate plugged into my local network that can get out to the internet. So we're going to see the difference between two Linux hosts, right? We're going to see that traffic. We're going to see what it can do, right? We're going to see the difference between the next generation firewall and that old school firewall, okay? So let's see if this is done booting up. Yeah, so we're good to go there. All right, cool.
I have a quick question.
What's up, buddy?
So for those that want to play, any of us that want to play the home game and actually use physical equipment, which FortiGate switches and firewalls should we look into picking up?
Pete, say it again. I'm sorry.
So for any of us that are playing the actual physical game, what suggested equipment should we look for FortiGate routers and switches and firewalls if we want to test this at home?
No, good question. I would say look at the, between the 60 series all the way to the 90 series, right? Low profile firewalls meant for just branches and small home office networks. Don't get you a 100 or a 200, and try to get you one that can run code 6.0, 6.4. I'm sorry. Or 7.0, and that's typically either a 600 or a 80, a 60 or 70 or 80 or a 90 E, right? E or a D. I believe a D goes all the way up to 6.4, but you want to go ahead and try to see if you can get an E level device, just because those are running 7.0.
Got it.
David, is that E as an egg? Is that E level?
E is an egg. Yep, okay, E is an egg.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and for the lab guys, I was blessed to go ahead and from one of my buddies to go ahead and get some 200 E's. So that's what you guys are going to be playing with in the physical lab. Okay.
Nice.
Let's go ahead and boot that. Go ahead and boot that up. Perfect. All right, folks, let's go ahead and jump in. And let's take a look at the Cisco router, right? So, old school network, right? We have our router, right? It's doing some NAT. What we call this, the technical term for this would be a NAT firewall, right? And so it's manipulating the source IP of inside traffic going out, right? And it's just mitigating specific networks, right? And so let's go ahead and take a look at that ACI. Go ahead and do a show run pipe. Whoops. Show run pipe. Include access. Okay. All right. So this is my access list, right? So I'm saying, hey, permit, the 10.10.1.0, which is my LAN network, which is lab-PC-5, and they sit behind that switch. this is the only network that's allowed currently. If there was another network, maybe we had a different VLAN, right? A different broadcast domain or a different network on the switch, right? And maybe it was a 10.10.2.0. This ACL would not allow that, right? So what's the difference between just this and a next generation firewall? Well, first things first, right? I can't look beyond layer 3, right? I may be able to, of course, modify the ACL with some layer 4 stuff, but that's about it. And add in a few things that, maybe layer 7 that I want to go ahead and not allow traffic to, but that's about it, right? Via ports, what have you, but that's about it. It doesn't get too in depth as far as, let's go ahead and look at some antivirus signatures. Let's look at some IPS signatures. Let's look at et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's, these NAT firewalls or these old school firewalls are real basic, okay? So then let's go ahead and look at the FortiGate. Okay, let's go ahead and log in. And again, guys, if you, because I know Chris brought it up and Daniel and Brian brought it up, if you don't have the pleasure of having physical devices, and if you have a small server or a small PC that has a lot of memory, a lot of RAM, and a good CPU, that you think that can run Eve NG, I have no problem having a step-by-step session on walking you guys through setting up Eve. Only thing I ask for is just, I'm going to go ahead and, tell you guys my schedule, and I'll probably just plan it out 2 weeks out. And I want to make sure that it's a whole group of people that needs help. If it's not, then yeah, it can be a one-on-one session. All right. So let's look at the FortiGate, right? So we just saw a NAT-based firewall. Now we're looking at a next generation firewall, right? What's the difference? Let's go look at our ACL, or firewall policy, as they call it in FortiGate, right? Of course, within ACLs, right, there's always, within any vendor, there's always an implicit deny at the end, right? If you don't permit a specific network or specific traffic, it's always going to hit that last rule, which is that implicit deny. And it's going to go ahead and drop that traffic coming in on whatever specific source going to any specific destination, okay? Let's look at the difference between creating, seeing an ACL on a next generation firewall versus that router. So let's pull back up the Cisco router again, right? Whoops, FortiGate. Here's my Cisco router, right? So you see this ACL, right? Says I'm permitting 10.10.1.0, right? .0.0.0.25. So this is a /24. This is just a wildcard mask, right? And that's it, right? Just, permitting layer 3. If I go here, and I'm going to go ahead and create an ACL for you guys. And we're going to say incoming interface, port 2, outgoing interface, port 1. Source, we're going to make the source all, right? And again, we'll get more into detail of how we can modify the source and the destination based on the OSI model. But we're just creating a simple ACL now, right? We're going to do NAT, right? But here's what I mean as far as unified threat management. These are the different unified threat management profiles that you can add, or the UTM features that you would see, right, in a UTM firewall or specified firewalls that you probably heard about back in the day. You have antivirus, you have web filter, you have DNS filter, you have application control, you have IPS, you have file filter, right? You have SSO inspection. A next generation firewall has all of that, right? And a FortiGate actually has specific profiles that you can modify to make sure that, let's say, Veronica, right, or Patrick is, admins of a FortiGate firewall. They can go in and maybe go into application control and say, hey, I want to go ahead and block TikTok since that traffic is going to Japan and there's a lot of things going on right now globally. So we don't want to be victims for those cyber criminals over there, right? So you can go in and say, I'm going to go ahead and block, TikTok, and I'm going to go ahead and allow it on this policy. Okay, so this ACLs is a bit different than our Cisco router or that NAT firewall policy, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just add a few UTMs, right? And of course, next generation firewall, especially for FortiGate, let's say we want to go ahead and just log whenever anything within a network, those end hosts, if they meet a condition or they trigger, hey, maybe this host is infected or what have you, it's going to go ahead and pop a log saying, hey, this host is infected, or we block traffic because maybe Brian was trying to go to TikTok and Veronica and Patrick already blocked TikTok via their UTM within this ACL. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create this ACL. All right, and let's look at the difference, right? Let's look at the difference between that old school ACL. Scan this down a little bit. Versus the ACL on the FortiGate firewall or next generation firewall. Very granular on the FortiGate, right? Right? And so this is exactly why, right? If Brian was coming in, or any of you cybersecurity, subject matter experts that are on the call now, that if you guys came to do an audit, you guys would say, if we implemented this next generation firewall, we would be okay, right? We would be okay because we're making sure we identified our source and our destination, right, within our ACL, right? We identified, right, we're doing some NATing, right? So our source traffic, right, we're doing some source NAT, and that traffic is being manipulated when it's leaving our network, right? And also, right, our unified threat management profiles are looking for signatures within any of those UTM profiles, antivirus, application control, IPS, right? And Patrick and Veronica went ahead and is blocking TikTok, right? So many things you can do with a FortiGate, right? And so, of course, when we start generating traffic, you'll see the difference, right? You'll see the difference. Now, let's say we wanted to go ahead and block TikTok on the Cisco router, right? It'll be so much more difficult because we would have to create an ACL that says access list 1 deny, and we would have to go through all of the domains or IP addresses that TikTok owns, since most businesses are in the cloud, right? Think of how much of a stress that would be. Or within the next generation firewall, right? Go ahead and dive in. I can go ahead and right here, right, and say, I want to block Facebook. Done. Facebook's blocked. Facebook's blocked, right? So now let's go ahead and test it, all right? Let's go ahead and test it out. Let's go ahead and log in. In 1 second. Folks, I'm just pulling up the 2 Linux boxes. I'm going to make them side by side. So just give me a moment. And guys, while I'm waiting to pull up these Linux boxes, any questions so far? Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect. I'll take that as a no. Yeah, what's up, Pat?
hey, so I'm looking at so I see the source and destination, get that part, but the from LAN port to the WAN, that's just the when we select the from LAN port to, is that like coming from like, so I'm trying to understand like the selection of that part of it. Are we plugging in like a PC or something like that into that LAN port too? And that's the only device that is going to be, that role is going to be specified for, along with the specific source port, the source.
That's a good question. So that's a good question. And let me make sure I understand your question correctly. So you're trying to ask to see if that ACL, is that source specified, source interface specified to just one port, or is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because that LAN port too is kind of like throwing me off. So, because I know that FortiGate has more ports, so that's only for that's port security essentially. Where that ACL is gonna be enforced, or is it gonna be like, I guess, all those LAN ports? Because I don't know what physical equipment and how many ports you have on that, but I was just trying to see like what's the range in that.
No, good question. So on the FortiGate, it's specified to just that one port. Okay, it's just specified to that one port. If you wanted to mitigate traffic from another port, we would need to go ahead and change that, right? We need to go ahead and create another ACL, right? And so typically, you wouldn't have one PC connected to a router, right? And of course, think of the firewall as a router that just does multiple functions. Okay, so we want to go ahead and make sure that, hey, can we go ahead and connect a switch behind that port, right? Can we go ahead and do et cetera, right? And so doing that, we go ahead and say we're giving that all devices that are behind that switch that is plugged into that port too, we're allowing that traffic to get out to the internet.
I see. I was thinking of it as the firewall being like a switch, so that's where my mind was kind of like, okay, that makes total sense. So you connect the switch to that LAN 1, and then anything that switch is connected to on the back end of that is going to be enforced as far as those ACL rules. Got it. Okay, cool. I just want to clarify.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Good stuff. Give me 1 second.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, what did you get those virtual images that you use for EVE-NG?
Good question. Yeah, so my job provided them, and it was paid. So, and of course, being Fortinet customers, I was able to go ahead and get them and get a trial license.
I mean, also you can get a free trial for 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
That's gonna be me in a couple weeks. Yeah, you can sorry, David, you can just go to the Fortinet website, and then you can actually create an account, and they're gonna give you like a I think it's whatever it doesn't matter the device you're gonna use, they're gonna give you like, they're gonna have an option for that. They're gonna have an option for KVM, and you can get like 30 days. You can keep using it.
Hey, just to clarify a little bit, yes, Solo 509 is correct. You can go on to their site, create an account, get a FortiCloud account, free one. you can actually log in there, and you can access these images, but the trial is only 14 days. You'll have to renew it every 14 days. So you can, once you get your EVE-NG set up and going, and you create your file folder, whatever, start importing images, and say you import a FortiGate image, just know that every 2 weeks, every 14 days, you'll have to go in and just kind of renew it, because it is a trial. But if you're going to be labbing and all that stuff, I mean, it's worth it. Unless you want to just pay for it. It's totally up to you. Free is for me. It's not a bad option. It'll just take a little time of actually getting it downloaded and imported into your EVE-NG. But if you need any assistance with that, I've done it several times. I even have some instructions on how to do it, step-by-step instructions. To actually import these images. If you need it, just reach out.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. Just to let you guys know, just rebooting the VM here. I saw a few errors pop out from Linux. So give me about 5 minutes if you guys want to step away, take some water, or what have you. VM will be back up roughly about 5 minutes. And again, of course, just random off topic. This is the reason why I prefer, physical over virtual, because again, you can have all this space and RAM and the best CPU in the world, but again, it's a host running on another physical device. Well, if the device is also doing other things, it can lock up. It can it can have errors. So for this Fortinet series, this is exactly why I got the physical devices. So we're gonna, outside of today, we're gonna be working on physical devices moving forward. And of course, if you guys are wondering where to find FortiGate physical devices, of course, for cheap, guys, go on. I believe Brian can share a website where he got his actual physical servers that are running ESXi. You can also look on eBay, and again, look at only the model numbers that I share with you guys. And I'll pop that, James, if you can pop those model numbers in the chat, model number 60s all the way up to model number 90. Again, keep it cheap, keep it simple, and just make sure we're staying either in the letter D series or the letter E series. So you guys can get that, so you guys can be on the 6.4 code or the 7.0 code. All right. And not to be too narrow. If you guys did get a older firewall, you get a maybe let's say you get a 90, I don't know, an older one, maybe a D model that can only do 6.2. That's perfectly fine too. If you just want to learn the basics of firewalling and how FortiGate works, that's perfectly fine as well, right? But if you're going to take the NSE4, I really recommend either getting 6.4.0 or 7.0, which of course the exams are now transitioning to 7.0.
And just to add to that, I was listening to some of your employers as everyone was kind of introducing themselves. If you can, get with some of your sales engineers, or if you can, if you partner with Fortinet, get with some of their sales engineers. Let them know that you're studying for your NSE, and ask them if they would be willing to send you a FortiGate. A lot of times they will, just because they know you're studying for it, you're a partner with the company, and they know that they do, it's a business transaction, right? So they'll send you one for free to allow you to study for it and give you an annual subscription. to FortiGuard, and all those things. So look into those other avenues and resources too, because a lot of times they're looking forward to that type of thing. And then you'll be able to build your own home lab off of free equipment and be able to study and learn how to navigate through those features for free. And ultimately it's for the clients that we service, right? So inquire about that too through your company, because a lot of times you may not even know that resource is available to you.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, definitely some good gems being dropped here. And again, guys, the floor is open. Any questions about the presentation, feel free to drop it. And of course, there's other folks outside of myself who's manages, provisions, and administrators FortiGate. So while we wait for the VM to pop up, feel free to ask questions.
So I had one thing I wanted to point out real quick. The website is called InStock 901. I'm gonna drop it in the chat too. Me and a few other people have purchased from there. I'm actually about to purchase. I think I'm about to purchase another one only because, of course, I got one running Proxmox, and when I start with VMware, just kind of start using the other one for ESXi, more updated one. But instock901.com is the website that you can use to actually get equipment, whether it be servers, monitors, different things like that you can use, to kind of make it productive and things like that. So I would recommend using that website to get servers and things like that. Or, like I said, if you want to use cloud or anything, you can go with that option too.
Awesome. And Brian, do you mind dropping that link in the chat for folks who may not be in the Slack?
I got you. I'm about to drop it in both.
Thank you, brother.
David, so that recommended FortiGate, it was, you said FortiGate 60 to 90E series on code 7.0.
Yeah. And yeah, don't worry about the code. The code, just like Angela was saying, you can pull that down, right? It's just, it's more so about the model. It's more so about the model and the letter. So either D or E.
Gotcha, D or E.
Fish out an F. If you can fish out, no, I'm sorry. Only, D and E. If you can fish out an F, if you, for some odd reason, find an F, hell, I'll buy it. I'll buy it from you. So yeah, just look for those. And again, that's running the newer code. And again, guys, you don't have to, go with the most expensive. If you do see D models, which of course there's a lot of D models on eBay. When I last checked roughly a week ago, if you can only get the D model, that's perfectly fine as well. If you just want to get the proof of concept, perfect. Okay. So don't feel like you have to push and try to get an E and spend $1,000, $2,000. Thanks, Brian.
No problem, boss.
So Dave,
Awesome. Dave, thank you. Yes.
I think that, this is Aaron Shaw. I think that I don't think that my organization will invest in this right now. It's something that would have to come from the higher ups. We're specifically a Cisco shop. So that's where I'm going to have to focus on building mine. I have an ASA right now that was given to me by the network manager, but I'm going to take that back because I think it's a little bit old. And I want to get like the latest and greatest because I'm going to start building my own little lab here, like you all are doing. And like the young lady was saying, she has designed a lab at home. And once again, I am looking at, parts of the more advanced parts of the OSI model. And before I, go to sleep tonight, I am going to take a test because the objective, I don't know how long it's going to take to be ready for this this network plus cert, but basically my job is right now they're just paying me to study and take certifications, and then they will reimburse me after if I pass a cert. So I know it's a gift, and I should work hard at this, but I am going to build that lab, and I think I'm going to have to go with Cisco because I don't have the funds to purchase anything from Fortnite, and but I will continue to study, and I'll continue to come to these meetings because this was really helpful this evening. I'm understanding data flow, traffic flow, and how this data is being blocked. Like you were talking about the proxy, and I guess DNS proxy is the same thing. It's stuff that I have to see every single day, and I'm trying to catch up. There's no keep up with me because I'm far behind. But I'm gonna work my ass off to get there. Thanks.
Nah, no problem, brother. And guys, I won't hold you up again. The VM is still rolling out, but luckily I do have some screenshots. So let me go ahead and pull those up, so it can make sense a little bit. So give me 1 second. Pull these up. See if we can find an ACL here. There we go. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen again. All right. So we have, luckily, thank God, I go ahead and grab screenshots. So while this VM is building, because again, I don't want to waste you guys' time. I want to keep it under an hour. I know we got started at 8:30, but again, here's the ACL, real granular. Back to Patrick's question. Port 2, right, inside our LAN, going to the WAN, right, port 1, right? And so we got our source. And don't worry about the source and the destination right now, right? Just think of it as it's our LAN going to any destination, right? We have our UTMs, right? We have our UTMs. And let me get my favorite marker. Do they have? Hold on. Okay, let me get my favorite color, right? So we got our source from going to the World Wide Web, right? We have the source coming from our LAN, going to anywhere, right? And of course, we got NAT going. So remember we talked about NAT firewalls, right? NAT is happening full force. And then we have our UTM profiles, right? We got our antivirus, we got our application control, and we have our intrusion prevention, right? We got our IPS all on here, right? And we're logging that traffic if a condition meets, okay? So if a condition meets, it's gonna go ahead and pop a log for it, okay? Now let's go ahead and take a look. Go ahead and take a look at how that looks, how application control looks, and how it's blocked. Give me 1 second. And there we go. Let me get my eraser. I have so much stuff on the screen. There we go. So guys, here's the Windows box, right? Or PC that's behind our LAN, right? And you see, right? Veronica, back to our example, Veronica and Patrick, they blocked, Twitter from end users that are inside the network from going to Twitter. And so if they tried to go to Twitter, right? The UTM catches it, boom. It says you can't go to Twitter. And here's why the FortiGate is blocking it, because of this UTM, the application control UTM. Does that make sense?
It
Makes
does.
perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And guys, and here's how the log, awesome. And here's how the logs looks, right? And so Patrick and Veronica, being the admins, they'll go ahead and verify that ACL is working on this next generation firewall. You can see, right? Our end user, Brian, he's trying to record himself. Data Life has a whatever, right? Data Life has a cybersecurity guy just drinking coffee on Twitter or TikTok, right? Patrick and Veronica putting this rule in, he can't get to Twitter. He can't get to any social media for that Mac, because of course we have UTM program saying we're going to block social media, we're going to block Twitter, we're going to block, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope you guys can see how powerful a next generation firewall is versus just the old school firewall. Okay. Going back to my favorite picture. Yes, sir.
Back to the screen that you were just on. With that one, that sometimes it hit, well, sometimes it was accepted where it says session start, or it's like they attempted to get on there automatically blocked. Is that what it's showing?
That's a good question. That's a good question, right? No, Brian, it's a good question. So he pointed out one great thing, right? So firewalls are stateful. What does that mean, right? And we're going to touch on this in later sessions, but, you know, situation arrives, I'm going to go ahead and explain it, right? So stateful meaning it tracks the state of a session, right? So if an end user, right, wants to go to, you know, they want to go to Twitter, right? It's going to create a session between itself, the source, and the destination, Twitter, and try to attempt to go ahead and get there. And the firewall, right, this stateful firewall, this next generation firewall is going to track the session. That's what it means by stateful. What's the opposite of stateful? Stateless, right? And that's where a lot of these old school firewalls would come in, that, or those, you know, those routers that just had ACLs would come in. They're typically stateless, right? They go ahead and say, hey, you have this IP address. Are you permitted? Are you permitted via that ACL? We're going to let you through. That's it. We're not going to track what else is going on. That next generation firewall says, based on what, you know, Veronica and Patrick configured, in the middle, right? Maybe at 9 o'clock in the morning, social media and Twitter was allowed. 10 o'clock meeting that Patrick and Veronica had with the CISO or the director and said, we need to block all social media. They may have gone ahead and made this change. This is why you see some traffic being accepted and some traffic being blocked, because in the middle of those stateful sessions, it's going to go ahead and the firewall is going to say, hey, unfortunately, there's a new rule, there's a new et cetera, et cetera. We're going to go ahead and make changes. So then the end users are going to see, hey, I can't get to this, I can't get to that. And they're going to, of course, probably start popping in tickets. But this is why you see the sessions are accepted, but then you see it's denied. Because that state, it's switching from, you know, being in an accepted state or a permit state going into a denied state. Does that make sense? Brian, I know that was your question.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Okay, good.
Appreciate the explanation.
Pat, I know you got a question. It's all good, bro. Pat, I know you got a question.
Yes. How you know I got it?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Look, you about to fire me off, man. Jesus. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, me or the other one?
No, you. I saw your hand raised. You.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just wondering if you can briefly explain what may be the difference between the web filtering and the app control. I'm asking this question because some of us tend to use more the web filter and the categorization in it than the app control specifically. I don't know if you have any explanation towards that. If you can briefly brush the difference between the web filter category, categorization, and the app control, because similarly, I think I don't know, they look like they are doing the same thing. Am I right or wrong? Say that. Yes.
No, you're right. You're right. So this is where the next generation firewall brings more value rather than just the isolated single function firewalls come into play, like just the web application firewalls or the unified threat management firewalls or the NAT firewalls or the routers that they're just doing that just have ACLs on there, right? So web application firewalls, right? Let's keep it simple. We know the OSI model, right? The upper layers have to do with the application, right? A web application firewalls just mitigates traffic between layers 5 and layer 7. That's it.
Thanks.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll drop here's what I'll do. I'll drop that's the article from FortiGate. I'll drop it in there, guys. And again, Fortinet does a great job keeping stuff simple. So they actually have definitions more granular, but again, still simple in that page that I just sent, okay? And the PowerPoint that I shared earlier, it's basically based off of this page, okay? All right.
I have a quick question.
So guys,
this is Veronica.
Yeah, Veronica, go ahead.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, so basically with like a policy-based next generation firewall, you can basically implement application control directly in like security policies without using an application control profile, basically. Is that correct?
Veronica, say that again for me.
Sorry, and I'm in the car. I'm so sorry. So what I had asked is, so just to make sure I understand correctly, like with a policy-based next generation firewall option, right? So that means you can implement an application control, like blocking certain websites directly in a security profile, in a security policy without implementing like a separate application control profile, basically, right?
Close, and I think the terminology is just scattered, right? So I think where you're getting at, and Veronica, please correct me. So within an ACL, you can go ahead and add a security profile, which one of those security profiles can either be antivirus, application control, or IPS, right? We can go ahead and either configure blocking a specific site or specific application via the security profile, or we can just go ahead and configure an object, a network object, and block it based on the destination, based on the IP address.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I hope that makes sense. No problem. No problem. All right, folks. Any other questions before we get finished? I know it's coming to the top of the hour. It's coming at 9:30. And again, these sessions are going to be bi-weekly.
Hey, David. Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah, what's up, boss?
So I don't know if you already went through this, but a good way that I remember the difference between like the old school firewall and like the next gen is with the next gen, like you said, stateful versus the stateless. So stateful is going to automatically allow the traffic to come back to the user as well, automatically, versus when it's a stateless. You can allow someone to go to Facebook, but if you don't have that role to allow that traffic to come back to the user, you won't be able to. And the traversal of the data is not going to be two-way. It's only going to be one way, which can cause problems too. So that's a good thing. What the next gen does, it automatically opens up that highway for that traffic to come back, without you having to make two separate rules for the entry and the exit of the data.
My man. Awesome.
Cool. Hey, David, the only thing I wanted to drop is I really like that question from Veronica, and I will go back and search it out myself to see if you can set a rule in the policy to block applications or certain applications. I'll go back and I'll look it up, and our next meeting I'll have that information for you. That was a great question. I'm learning all the time, and that was great. That was great. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Any other questions, folks? All right, folks. Well, I'll go ahead and end it here. Again, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And for the folks that are interested in routing and switching, because of course, prior to getting to firewalls, it's highly recommended to learn the fundamentals of routing and switching. So we are starting back our routing and switching sessions on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Again, they will be recorded. So no pressure. You don't have to be on the call, or you don't have to be in the session. They will be recorded and they will be uploaded. Okay. And those meeting sessions, information will be shared. All right. With that being said, all right, folks, you have a great night, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you guys.
Everyone. Appreciate it, Dave.
See you later.